Hey everybody. So sorry about the printer noise in the background. I've got printers running all the time now, so if I'm going to do videos, there's going to be noise in the background. So I'm going to do a video today and talk about a little bit about the next version of the mini desktop case, and then this Twister OS version project that I've been working on. So just a little basic background. I originally made this mini desktop case, I don't know, a little over a year ago. As I worked with it, though, I learned a lot about making things for 3D printing and whatnot, and there were a lot of different branches to the evolutionary tree of this that had a lot of little details changed, and I took some time off, and when I came back, I didn't want to start trying to straighten out the CAD for this. It was really disjointed. It was, like I say, it was like a tree that went in a whole bunch of different directions. Each branch had different things about it. I wanted to kind of consolidate it. I also wanted to add compatibility for these Geekworm M.2 boards. These are version 2 of these boards. There's an X862 version 2 that does regular M.2, and then there's a X873, which is version 2 of the X872, that does NVMe drive. So I wanted to add compatibility for these. So these cases are all compatible with that optionally. You don't have to use that, but you can. So anyway, I made a new version that looked like this. One of the problems with the old version was getting this hole to line up with the fan on the heatsink, because the heat sinks aren't super. These are compatible with the Ice Tower, the original Ice Tower cooler. These Ice Tower coolers are not. They're not very consistent in their dimensions. Like you might see, I think this one leans this way a little bit. Some people get them and they lean the other way a little bit, which means that the fan moves where it is in relation to the hole in the opening. Some of them, even this is the case with, I have two of these, and it's the case that one of them, the heatsink is pushed further down onto the heat pipes than it is on the other ones. So that moves the fan up and down in relation to the hole. So that was always a problem, and my solution originally was just to put these grills on it so you don't see so much if that fan doesn't line up. When it's this big gaping open hole and then the fan doesn't line up, it's really obvious. So also, when I was doing these and selling them on Etsy, people asked every now and then, hey, can you make one that looks exactly like my big PC? I think it'd be cool to have the big PC and the little PC that matches. And I didn't really know at the time, you know, it's kind of new to the whole thing. I hadn't really, like, deconstructed this and then reconstructed it, really, to kind of see where I could make changes. So anyway, at the time I said no, but I kind of kept it in mind, like, look at modern PCs and how they do things and, you know, try to emulate it where I can. So I took this new one that I made that's compatible with the X862, and I took all the panels off of it. And I made a few little changes inside. There's a structure piece inside that looks like this. The original one looks like this. And this next version, it looks like this. Basically, I cut this off and lowered it down. It looks like that. It prints a little faster, and it allowed me to kind of change a little bit about the way that the airflow works in this new version of the case. So this version I printed clear, so you can just kind of see. There's, on the secondary fan here, there is a piece that looks like this that goes in there, and it blocks any hot air from migrating back in and getting sucked back into this fan. And then on the heatsink fan, there's this piece that looks like this. It screws to the face of the fan, and it comes around this way, and it kind of allows this fan to draw air from this opening or from up here, and it keeps the hot air coming out of the heatsink from migrating back through and getting sucked back into the fan. So those were kind of necessary because on this, you know, all the air going into the fan is coming down this cone. So it was kind of necessary to make these things. On this one, it is less than 1/4 of a millimeter gap anywhere on the inside of this, so really prevents the air. It even goes so far that there's these little tiny cutouts on the corner. If you have trouble getting this case to fit, make sure there isn't still a little piece of support material in there that you might need to pick out with your fingernail. Obviously I couldn't be so exact with this piece on the side, so I tried to make it where, like, not being exact doesn't matter, because this has the same problem where if the heatsink is a little off, it moves it. So last year when I was making these, someone from the Twister OS project asked me if I would do a version of the case. At the time, I was doing versions of the case that had like a Raspberry Pi logo or something over one of the fans. So they asked me if I could do a Twister OS logo on a couple of cases. So I did that, and then they were happy with them, I guess. Someone contacted me early this year about doing it again. They've changed the logo for the Twister OS. So someone contacted me, asked me, and would I like to do it, and maybe make a few to sell on the Discord server. So I sort of started working on that. I sort of started lurking on their Discord server some as well. I'd never used Discord before. I'm an old man. So anyway, I basically kind of just added the logo. It's their logo has this square, and then it has the tornado thing on it. So I tried to add that to the side of the case. And I did it in a few different ways. I mean, they're all pretty much the same, but kind of details are a little bit different. So this is my favorite one of the project, I think. I always like it when I do like the dual blue fans. I'm not into the color changing fans. I think this one's really nice. This one has a blue stripe around it. You can kind of see this one is purple and white. And you can kind of see this stripe. That's done with a color change on this outside panel. And then there's this stripe that runs across here. That's done with a color change on these panels, the SD side and the USB side, as I call them. So this one, the alternate color is translucent blue. So it's kind of hard to see maybe in the video, but those stripes do glow a little bit in some spots. So I really like that. You can kind of see this a little bit better on this one because this one is black and white. So with the color change, you not only get this stripe, but there's like a white outline in all of these grills, which I think looks pretty nice. So this one is another one like this. This one has translucent blue backing on the logo. So this one has white backing on the logo because it's the second color. Basically, the logo is the same height as this stripe, and this logo is the same height as this stripe, like when you print them. So I like that detail about it, the like alternating color, and I played with that throughout all of these, trying different color combos and whatnot. That's why it ended up taking me a week to do it when I was hoping it would take just a couple of days. But I also used a lot of white and black, and I only had one spool of each, so that kind of limited my bandwidth that I had to work with. So I think I should now assemble one, and then we'll go through all the rest of the Twister OS ones. I want people to see what they look like, if they're going to be ordering them from someone that's not me. I'd like them to see what it looks like. So let's talk about assembling one. So let's assemble this black and gray one, and we will. So we're going to do this. I've got this completely disassembled. Got the board. This, like I say, is optional. If you are going to use that, there's a little thing you need to cut out on the case. When I final assemble them for shipping, I assemble the screws that I include and these little standoffs. And the standoffs are just kind of there as just an extra in case you lose one or whatever. They're the same size as the standoffs that come with the X872 board, but 3D printing isn't really as exacting as these. And also, these, if you over tighten them, they're going to strip, whereas if you over tighten these, they're probably going to break off. But anyway, you should use the brass ones if you have the brass ones available. These are just kind of there to hold the screws in place, and if you absolutely need color matched ones or whatever. So I've got some heatsink compound as well here. So we're gonna use that instead of the little pink pads that come with the ice tower cooler. These are the standoffs that came with the ice tower cooler here. And if you're not going to use the secondary board in place of these standoffs, you'll need some nuts, or you could use these as nuts, but again, don't over tighten them. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take this part way apart. So I recommend undoing the screws on one side of this case, and then taking the other side all the way out. It doesn't really matter which side you do. I also try to include a few extra of these little screws, because I know sometimes, like, I used to live in a house with hardwood floors, and when you drop a screw, you'd hear it go tink, tink, tink across the floor, and it was really easy to find where it went. And now my office has carpet installed by the previous owner, which I'm not really that into, but you drop a screw on it, it's like kind of a tan color. It's not exactly the same color as screws, it's closer to the color of the standoffs, but for some reason screws just absolutely vanish if I drop them. So I learned my lesson, and now I include a couple extra screws for all you people with carpet. And you can pull that out, it doesn't really matter if you pull it out or leave it in. And I say loosen the other side so you can spread this out, and then this piece will just lift out. Oh, this one has the standoffs in place already. So obviously remove the screws and the standoffs. I know this is dry and boring video. If you're not getting one of these cases, or you can figure out how to install it on your own, don't feel obligated to watch this. Alright, and untwist this, because I only twist that around like that so that it doesn't get pinched in the side when I assemble the cases. So I just get those kind of out of the way. Now what we want to do is attach this to this. Which basically you'll want to have your fan off. Basically you just drop it through, make sure you're not pinching the cables anywhere. Now we're going to start these little 5mm screws that I include with the kit. They're a little longer than the ones that come with the ice tower, at least they're longer than some of the ones that come with the ice tower. I had a problem early on with people getting these, not being able to get their the screw all the way through. So once you get that through, start one of these standoffs that came with the ice tower, and you're just basically going to do that 4 times. I find this is the easiest way to do it. You could, you know, have this all kind of assembled on the pie and then try to build this on top of it, but I think it works better this way. And now it is time to get this through. And my rule of thumb, which I'm breaking myself here, is don't ever tighten anything all the way down until all of them are started. Because, you know, if you get it too tight, then it can interfere with getting the next one started or the last one started or whatever. So make sure they're all good and tight. And now we're going to add our heatsink compound to the pie. This is the oft-debated how much is needed question. So that's how much I do. Now this just sits down on top of the pie. I find it's easier to do it this way than trying to get this to line up if you've already got this part done. Now you use the standoffs, or if you're not using the secondary, the M.2 board, then you would just use your nuts that came with the ice tower, or you could use these little standoffs that I include, but don't over tighten them. You know, if you over tighten them and it strips out, then you could cause a gap between the heatsink and the processor, and then, you know, that's not good. So if the ice tower, if you're using the, not the ice tower, the M.2 board, put it on now. I only use 2 screws on these. I think 4 is overkill. 4 standoffs, 2 screws. But you know, go ahead and use all 4 screws if you've got them. And if you've got them, use the screws that come with the M.2 board. Some of them are really like a flat and wide head. Use those at least in these 2 positions if you have those available. The case will fit around them, but it might fit a little better with those in place. So now this fan connects, the ground connects to this very back corner here, and this one connects to the second pin here, like so. So now we take our fan for our ice tower, put it on there. We take our little duct piece. These wires should be on this corner, so they kind of come around like that. This is beveled here to provide a little extra room for the wires behind here. You may find it's easier to put them together. This has kind of little Lego pins. They don't quite fit as tight as Legos. Different fans, the black fans, I think they would fit more like Legos because the black fans seem to have a tinier hole there. So this little bag of screws that came with it, these are the screws that originally came with this fan, or came with the secondary fan here. So I've started using these. Oh, that's got a little glob of plastic in it. That's a good thing to show. So sometimes there's a little, plastic string that gets in the way of these holes when it prints. There's support on this piece when it prints. There's support inside here and here, so it kind of leaves a little nasty surface there. And sometimes, like I say, there'll be a little string of plastic that goes across the holes. If it does, just take your screwdriver like I did and just kind of clean the top of the hole. Just stick it in there like that, and that'll kind of put a little bevel on it and knock any unwanted material out of the way. Again, don't tighten anything until everything is started. That's just a good rule in life. Don't tighten any of your bolts all the way until they're all started. Alright, and now this wire goes on the first pin. This goes on the third pin, and I like to kind of tuck that up in behind there. Make sure it doesn't get caught in the side of the case when we put it together. Make sure they're all pushed down on there good, and it doesn't hurt to fire it up. Make sure the fans are spinning as well. I have gotten some of these fans, taken them out of the packaging and like put them all together, and then realized like there's a nut from this little bag of screws that comes with it like jammed inside, or sometimes the screws even get in there kind of crossways. So always helps to, or it's always a good idea to really look at it closely. Finally, if you are using the M.2 board, this side of the case, there is this little thing here. And you can see there's basically like a cutout recess there. That lines up with this USB port. So you can just take an X-Acto knife, or I have this razor blade thing because I've lost my X-Acto knife, and you can just cut it out. It's only 0.24 millimeters thick there. So it cuts out pretty easily. Once you get it started from one side, you can kind of go at it from the other. So, like so. Just kind of break it out. So now that, when you put this together, that'll line up with the USB for that. I'm not going to do this on this one that I'm selling, because the person who's getting this may not want that done. And if you're going to get one directly from me and you want that done, just tell me, and like I can even print it with the hole already cut, makes a little bit nicer hole that way. But I didn't want to leave like a gaping hole on the side of the case for, you know, people who don't have that. Those SSD cards are kind of hard to find. They're not in stock often. These also, I guess I kind of should have pointed out, that there's a little round protrusion, little collar that sticks out around the screw holes, and the structural parts have the same hole there, so they kind of, once you get it in place, it'll kind of hold the holes lined up for you, so that makes assembly a little easier. Although if you don't have these screws over here tight enough, it can be hard to get those things to where they like pop in and line up. So it's just a good idea to have this side, you know, 2 or 3 turns loose. And if you have a fitment issue on this side, it may be because the standoffs are too tight there to go around this thing, so you may need to kind of loosen it up, the screw on your standoff there, especially if you're using my printed standoffs, because 1/4 millimeter is like the print height, so they could be off by as much as 1/4 millimeter of the size that the standoff is supposed to be. So this one, depending on your ice tower, this part can be a little bit hard to get in because it stands, some of the ice towers, like I say, some are taller than others. It stands a little tall of this rail that this fits into, so you can't actually slide it all the way in from this side. You kind of got to start it halfway and then slide it in like so. The bottom one, there's no such problem. Unless you've got particularly long screws hanging down here. It could, I guess, be a problem. But if you use the screws that came with the M.2 board, like I say, they have those little flat screws, so you got a little more clearance to work with. And then this side just goes on, and then go around and tighten all the screws. Alright, so there it is, all done. Let's see how this one looks. So this one, whereas the other ones had the background and the logos, this one, the logo is just, it's just an open hole, so it kind of shows the emblem through the side, so, or the logo, I guess. So that's assembly, and there's not much to it. It's very similar to the previous ones I did. There is a lot to it, but it's very similar to the previous mini desktop cases I did. So now I want to go one at a time through the cases I did for this project. If you're not in the market for one of these, then, you know, other than inspiration maybe, for printing your own cases, if you're printing your own cases. So this one is, you saw the inside is gray. It's black, but it's got this gray stripe that runs around it. Somehow I missed a screw. Anyway, it's got the gray stripes that run around here. You can kind of see the gray inside a little bit. It's very sort of low-key and not very showy. This was my favorite. I did this one early on in the project, and I kind of tried to chase the dragon on this one, you might say. Because I really like the way this one looks. This is was my favorite of the batch until the very last day I printed this blue one. This is the translucent blue and white, which this one I think is my favorite. I like the blue fans in it. There is this one, which is black and blue. It was again trying to recapture the magic of this one, but the blue just doesn't pop like the white does. So there's a white and or a black and blue one, and then this one it's the same G-code files as this. It's the same print as this, but instead of being the translucent blue, it's just translucent white. So it'll glow a little bit around the edges like this one does. So I did a black and gold because I've done black and gold cases before and usually liked them. And this one is okay. The gold is getting kind of old, so the gold doesn't print very well. But anyway, I still made this one, and it's good enough that I'm happy with it, but it's not as cool as I thought it was going to be. There's a black and white one. This one actually also has a gray stripe, and the internal parts are all gray on this one. This one is this same G-code file again, but it's gray with translucent logo. So it kind of does the same, showing a little bit of the line, but it's much darker otherwise. And then this one, the guy that requested these said, you know, our color's blue, so experiment with some blue. So this one is white with just the blue stripes, but I was almost out. This is actually the same blue as this, but I was almost out of this blue, so I didn't have enough to do the stripe that would go across here and the blue background on this side. But the internal parts are mostly that blue, but it's got a little bit of black too. So I think that's all of them. It is not all of them. I also had this one, which I kind of like, but I understand that a lot of people probably aren't into this purple as much as I'm into this purple. It's metallic purple, it's silk purple, so it looks really nice. This one also, no logo on the outside. The logos are backlit. So I'm going to put this onto one of the ones that has the fans in it so you can see what this looks like. So there it is, sort of haphazardly halfway assembled. And can you see the logo glowing? I'm going to try to get it a little darker in here. So that's really kind of the only thing about the purple case that I'm not a huge fan of, is how dark it has to be for the effect to work. This effect works a lot better if you have like cheaper PLA, but this is PLA plus. It's more opaque than most PLA, but it looks really cool. Also notice the output side of this fan. It leaves nice stripes, and they have a nice effect when they change color. So anyway, that is the Twister version of the Twister OS version of the next version of the mini desktop case. Also, these rails on the bottom, I totally should have mentioned this before now. These rails on the bottom are to hold a 2.5-inch SSD. If you don't want to use a 2.5-inch SSD, when you assemble it, you can just unscrew those, and the holes that they go into are the same size as the holes on these rails for the little rubber feet, which none of these have yet. So when I ship these out, I'll ship them with the little stick-in rubber feet. You can put them in here. If you are going to use the SSD rails, you can put them in the bottom of the case if you're not. So that's another way you can kind of customize it when you put it together. So anyway, sorry this video is kind of messed up and a lot of noise in the background, but I really wanted to get it out because this project is done and I'm ready to move on. I got new ideas that I want to start working with. So thanks for watching. I'll see you later.